for Ever Bristol City podcast. We thought we were going to have a week off with it being the international break, but far from that. Around about 10:30, 10:45 yesterday morning, well, the unthinkable happened in some respects and maybe not in others. And well, I'm delighted today to be joined by a cast of Forever Bristol City podcast contributors. Neil's here with me, Dave Tubby, Tom of the Robin's Nest, Adam, Katie, Richard Angle, and Ant Banks. Richard Angle straight back from watching England last night. And he actually said what I've always said, they're as bad as City at their worst. And last night, I think, proved that point. There we go. Let's come to each of you in turn. You first, Dave Tubby. What did you think it was a wind-up? Do you think it was April 1st come early?
Unfortunately, no. It took a bit of blinking to understand that this is actually happening, that this is real. And to be honest, I'm glad that he's gone, because I spent so long thinking that he should fight a tide, but they were never going to back him, were they? And I think that there is a story to tell, a story of how we got here. And I appreciate that everyone's got to be quick, but it's a story that I want to tell, first of all. It starts before Struber enters the building. You have to understand that Brian Tinian and John Lansdowne just decided that Tanner was going to have a contract. Tom Woolcliffe wasn't quite powerful enough to make a decision. Fast forward to August, the same two people, Brian Tinian and John Lansdowne, wanted to give Bell a contract before he went out on loan, because that's just what you do. Thankfully, Rawcliffe was able to say, no, let's stop. That is the nonsense that Struber was dealing with. We then go through seeing the beginning of the season and we start well. We then have a centre midfield crisis where we go 2 months with one fit centre midfielder. Somehow we overcome that and we stay in the game. We get to the transfer window. What do they do? Nothing. They then sell 2 of our 4 best players this season. Then, just to make it worse, they don't bring any defensive recruitment, and we get 2 centre-backs that go out sick or go out injured. So we've got one fit one. And people today want to talk about results, forgetting all of that context. When we talk about accountability, apparently that only affects the manager. That doesn't affect Brian Tinian. A demotion is still in the club. You know, good luck with getting less money. Let's see what happens there. He would be quite a well-paid youth academy guy, I imagine. When we talk about it, Steve Lansdowne, where's your accountability? However, there is one bit of good news here. They are that arrogant that the next manager next season, they will back him to prove they were right. And that's why I'm glad that Struber is gone.
Okay. And your thoughts, well put there by Dave Tubb. Your thoughts on what you thought at 11 o'clock yesterday morning?
Well, everything old is new again. For Gerhard Struber, Reed, Nigel Pearson, Reed, hamstrung by various injuries, hamstrung by an unsupportive board because it's a manager who happens to challenge their cosy little version of a status quo, and therefore they're not going to support him. They're going to, in fact, almost go out of the way to make sure he fails rather than anything else. And I do agree with a silver lining of, yeah, we oscillate. We oscillate from a young and upcoming coach to a grizzled old veteran to this, to that, with no real consistency and pattern or identity. And we'll come to the next manager candidate soon, but does anybody have any real confidence it will follow a decent progressive pattern? They will give the next manager money because Steve Lansdowne is hurt by chance. He's not happy in any way, shape or form. It's a special man who hears Lansdowne don't care about me or sack the board and says, I know who I mean by the board, the manager. Let's get rid of him, not me. But the problem here, and this is where the parallels with Pearson start to diverge a bit. Nigel Pearson left Liam Manning with a squad which needed minor tuning in order to be successful and didn't need loads of money spent. If you look at the money we did spend in summer 2024, it was by and large wasted, and a lot of those people still aren't here. The core still remained. The difference now is you haven't got that much of a core. You've got that core out of contract. So if Steve Lansdowne wants to support this club to justify his decisions and make himself feel better with some kind of yes man, it ain't going to be investing £2 million on Sinclair Armstrong and Fally Miulu. It's going to be investing serious capital. And the concern I've got is what actually happens next, and does he had the arrogance to actually more. I've had enough. You've said some hurty words about me and my son.
Interesting. Katie, what was your immediate thought at 10 o'clock, 10:30? Was your phone buzzing? Were you looking at your screen in disbelief? Or did you find out maybe later in the day, as some people I know did, couldn't believe it?
No, I actually seen it before Russell put it up. I've seen a few things in the morning, kind of seen it, or, you know, the typical people all right, spreading the old lies and stuff like that. But yeah, no, I'm not surprised by Struber being sacked. I was more surprised with the Roy appointment. And over time, since, you know, yesterday, the hours, I kind of thought about it, and I could understand maybe the Struber sacking in a way, but I still can't get my head over the Roy appointment. It just confuses me. For me, you know, they've come out and said about the sporting director is going to come and bring in the new manager in the new year. So why not just keep Gerhard till the summer and see where we are, see if that sporting director might come in and like him. So unless they've already know that sporting director is and he's made that decision behind the scenes, that's the only reason I can think that it makes sense. But still, the Roy appointment don't make sense. Clearly, he's been brought in from Scudamore. But for 7 games, what's the point? For me, you know, we're 12 points off the top, 12 points off the bottom. In theory, we would have to do really, really badly, and everyone else around us would have to do really, really well for us to be in trouble. So why not just bear it out to the summer and then make the decisions in the summer once we've got that appointment of the sporting director? The Tinian thing, I think, is an absolute cop-out, to be honest, in my opinion. Yeah, okay, he's been promoted to that academy role, but he's still going to have a seat around the table, because whoever comes in and with Roy and things like that, he's going to want to speak to him about the academy players, who's, you know, ready, who can be the future. So all those meetings that's going to be had about Saturday's game or Tuesday game or whatever, he's going to have a seat at the table. He's still going to have his opinions and put his, you know, pence in, shall we say. So yeah, I'm not particularly happy with it. I would have liked to see Struber stay and in the summer with some backing, if they're going to give any backing, that is, see how he does, and also see what kind of relationship he can set up with the sporting director, because in previous roles he's always had that with the sporting director. So will he do better with that, rather than opinion telling him what to do, which seems to be what's been being done in the last 9 months that he's been here.
Tinian and young Tom of the Robin's Nest. I don't know if you were going to do a video, I think you put up before all this happened yesterday. I don't know whether you've done one yet, but hopefully you will do, and we can all watch that. But Tom, what were your thoughts? Disbelief sort of seems to be the most popular word.
Yeah, I can't say I was surprised really to see Struber sacked after what he was saying in the media, based on track record of previous managers. 78-year-old Roy, not to be ageist, but 78-year-old Roy Hodgson coming in was definitely quite the surprise to me. And yeah, it was mentioned a couple of times. It feels like a lot of accountability has already been put on this sporting director, and we don't even know who they are yet. So this mythical sporting director is going to save us all, apparently. That's what I'm worried about.
Okay, Adam, your thoughts?
An absolute circus, to be honest, Dave. I think Dave and Tom, to an extent, have touched on some of the points I would raise with it. To be honest, I think the writing was on the wall for Struber. Right from the results starting to drop, I think the fact that he started speaking out in recent weeks was the perfect opportunity for Lansdowne. And as Dave said to start with, they were never going to back him. They were never going to back him in the summer. So I think it's best for all parties, but it's so hard to be enthusiastic about what comes next. As Ant says, what does come next? But yeah, in all honesty, wasn't shocked at all. I'd like to think the optimist in me is the fact Tinian being demoted, I think it's the beginning of the end. I'd like to think that, but maybe that's me trying to look at it through rose tinted and what's been, absolute chaos. A crazy day in the Lansdowne Circus, basically.
Yeah, Richard, your thoughts on it? Crazy day. That's a good description from Adam there. What did you think?
Okay, well, when you see the sad corner flag come up on your club's social media feeds, that only means one thing. First of all, thank you, Gerhard, for starting the revolution, for actually being the person that's awoken so many of our fans and seen the scales drop from their eyes. This is the start of the Lansdowne's going. Gerhard, it's been a death by 1,000 cuts. When you went, you were knocked out. You couldn't land the fatal blow to get Tinian out as well. But my God, you've put him on his backside, and that man no longer has control of the club like he used to have. We spoke last week about a sporting director, and we all laughed at the prospect of Neil Warnock because he was 72 years old. But talk about a WTF moment. We have brought in a man who's older than Warnock. My concern, and I'm going to be totally clear on this, everyone, is that with 7 games left, there won't be a new manager bounce because Roy doesn't need a new manager bounce. But what the hell happens if he wins 5 games? Do we end up in a situation at the end of the season where he is our sporting director, and for the love of God, does he bring Ray Lewington in, his best mate? Things are going to be bad if that happens.
Neil, what did Neil sat here very patiently next to me? Neil, what did you think?
Well,
It was your wedding anniversary yesterday, wasn't it? Yeah.
Well,
He's forgotten about it. He was meant to come with me to the 1986.
Well, my wife won't watch the podcast, so that's fine. Thank you for dropping me in there.
Yeah.
So I was up at a case conference up in London with one of the league councils, and my watch was buzzing, and I came out to about 140 odd WhatsApp messages from various groups and all the rest of it. And it is, as Richard said, the WTF moment, but I'm not surprised by Struber. I think one of the consistent things about this club and consistent things about the Lansdownes and Steve Lansdowne is when you start briefing the media, when you start saying through the media, oh, this needs to change, the club needs to do this, the club needs to do that. And Steve, with his interview in January, just reinforced this is my club. I do things my way, and if you brief against it, you're going to get the heave-ho. So I think the fact that the results had dropped off just gave him the legitimate reason in his eyes to make the change. I think we're in for a bit of a fun and games, aren't we? I mean, I'm led to believe that the season ticket fiasco, really, they videoed all the stuff weeks ago. They were ready to launch the season tickets weeks ago, but they've gone through a Spanish company, and that Spanish company has completely cocked up the season ticket stuff. So they've had to go back and restart it all. So here we are going into April, and I'm sure, trying to launch it now. What are you going to say?
What are you going to sell? What is it to sell?
What are you going to sell it in the club itself? So, I think we've created a massive hole for ourselves next season. There's so many players that are going out of contract next season, and we're nowhere near agreeing any deals with it. So even your key components are leaving in the summer. So anybody coming in now. The thing for me yesterday that really got me above and beyond the Roy Hodgson, coming back after 44 years to finish what he did the first time, was they're going to use the academic the pathway. And I'm thinking, what pathway? There's nobody in the academy.
No.
And the players that are in the academy are either out on loan at the moment
and not playing,
or they're injured.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you're going to bring Hodgson in and say, right, what I'd like you to do, Roy, is play academy players,
Well, that's where Tinian's influence.
Who do you think? I mean, it just shows the disconnect. It just shows the disconnect from the SLT at the club that they think there is a pathway. There hasn't been a pathway for years. We haven't used youth in the first team for years. There's no pathway.
Well, there hasn't been since Alex Scott, basically.
Yeah, I mean, which is two.
And Elijah Morrison was stunted. Right, let's move on. Dave, you were saying you mustn't judge Struber on results, right? But the facts are this: 1 win in 8, 29 games, 27 games, 29 points. Without that start, we'd be in the SHI by now. He hasn't helped himself, and lining up as he did against West Brom, playing players out of position, when if he'd have showed some tactical awareness, he could have played with a back four. You know, if this lad Naylor's been signed from Man City, okay, he can't be as bad as Mabude was, but he's not helped himself, has he? Both with his tactics, because we've been starting to look a mess. You've not seen this chaos football. Try and defend Struber from a tactical point of view, and acknowledging that he's had players taken from under him, because I don't think we're playing with any identity at all. I'll ask the same question to each of you. He's not helped himself, and what's happened had a degree of inevitability about it, purely from a footballing standpoint.
Okay, from a footballing standpoint, you can answer it in 4 words, and those 4 words are Viner, Dickey, Atkinson, and Annis. I mean, what are you supposed to do if you lose those 4 players? You're talking 4 high-quality players there, 2 of them Player of the Year candidates, and in the way that Struber wants to play football, Viner is one of the best packers, which means breaking the lines passes in the Championship. He takes the risky pass and he's more successful with it than he gets credit for. Dickey is good at it, but needs certain defenders around him. Atkinson, the driver, gets the ball in drives. And won't agree with me fully here, but Annis, big player, decision maker, made things tick. There's a reason that Ipswich fans are very, very happy with the price they got him for. You take those 4 players out of a side, you have big, big problems. You take your centre-backs, Bristol City Airways. Think about the goals we've conceded recently. You talk about taking Knight out of the side. You've got a point in Middlesbrough doing that. You go to that back 4. Who's your second defender? Who are you putting next to him? I mean, it's not as easy as, let's just put Naylor there. So basically, the solution is to have a back 4 that consists of McCrory on the right, Ayla, and then having the other side, having Borges and Naylor. It doesn't achieve anything.
Where's Cam Pring? What's the matter with Cam Pring?
So you want to put Cam Pring and Borges, which is the very problem on the left-hand side, and just move them slightly. I would have put
Cam Pring and Naylor. What's the point of signing him?
But listen to what you're saying. You would have put Cam Pring as the centre-back and Naylor. That is not the solution. You're still going to lose the Airways, and we can say that it's a results-based game. Absolutely, and that is why I've said that recruitment must fall, because it's on them. Now, if, for example, Hodgson comes in and wins 5 games in a row, fair enough. Fair enough. He showed that things can be done. But what do you see in that side? What are you expecting? Because I keep hearing the phrase, there was an injury problem. They've sold the best player. But. No but. That is the fact of the problem. That's why we lost. It's not on Struber. You can't expect someone to play their best style of football that we saw what it was like if you don't back them properly. Because what Hodgson's going to do, he's going to set up with 2 banks of 4. We stick with 0, and if we get a goal, great. If we get something from it, fantastic. I could do that. You could do that. Anyone on this podcast could do that. He does it to a high quality level. The difference is that going forward, that's not what we want to see. He's come in to steady the ship. The ones above are the ones that need to take accountability for that. And yes, it's a results-based game, but it's on them.
Okay, good defence. And, the football, it's been questionable. I'm going to say despite the injuries, I'm probably being very harsh there, but he's not helped himself. He's made the utterances, and there's talk of him losing the dressing room, allegedly, the players. And I thought that wasn't true when I saw the joy when they got the equaliser at Middlesbrough. But it was talk that when they lost the game, he'd bring them all in on the Sunday, make them look at the game on video. They didn't like it. So that losing the dressing room thing. Interestingly, I haven't played back any of the interviews, but for very many weeks, he was always calling them my boys, right? He hasn't called them that for weeks. Struber, give a defence for Struber. And Dave's put a strong one at the shop, what I said down in flames, quite rightly, but give a defence for Struber.
Well, there's a degree here of polishing the proverbial turd, isn't there, rather than anything else? Because it would be a fool to say that Struber hasn't got things wrong. And if you took it in microcosm, why did Jason Knight work at the back against Middlesbrough? Because you had Tommy Conway playing now, who's not particularly physical forward, and therefore you didn't have the problem of playing against the big balls coming in the box. You fast forward to West Brom, you've got Josh Maja playing there. It's never going to work as well. So you can point to small tactical things there. But you're looking at those defensive players again. For me, Viner was a far bigger loss than Mehmeti. It was a far, far bigger loss because he was so integral to how we play and getting that ball forward. We've not seen those balls progressively move forward since Zach Viner left the club. But if you're apportioning blame, there has to be some apportioning of blame to Struber because, you know, that's just a fact of life. He's working with one hand tied behind his back, but has he made the best of that hand? No. I'll point to one tactical point there. We can point to things like, although you're managing minutes sometimes, there's a bit of looking for an unpromised tomorrow by sacrificing today. So there are little bits that go on there, and there are things that we'd have all done differently in game. Not so there were, not so there wouldn't. There are bits of the players. Did he lose the dressing room? No, he didn't. He absolutely didn't. There's one bloke lost the dressing room, and he lives in Guernsey. And that's the guy who lost the dressing room. And if you really want to trace everything back, context is absolute key here. We talk about all the circumstances that come before, selling loads of players in January. I looked at that interview and I ranted about it when we had the Derby game, and my big problem was that's when fans can ruin this football club. That's the one we'd have all gone, that's not a good thing. The broader one, if I'm a player sat in that changing room, is we couldn't stand in Zach's way of this opportunity. Okay? Now, break that down. We couldn't stand in Zach Viner's way to go to a club that were below us in the table at the time, that although, yes, it's the Disney story and they've got all the stuff going on, Reynolds and McElhenney, etc. 3 divisions below us a few years ago, 3 sides to the ground. When the Disney money goes, that story ends without a shadow of a doubt. When the public interest goes, that's gone. But you're sat in that changing room and you're hearing your owner say, we can't stand in the way of a player going to a club that are below us in the table. You know, it is ridiculous. And if you're in any employment and your chief turns around and says, actually, guys, you know what? We're a bit shit. These guys below us, they're better than us. They're a far better bet. If you don't want to go to them, I can't stand in your way. Can you really not understand there's going to be a drop-off in performance of 10, 20% psychologically?
Yeah, and
that's what's happened. He's killed it, not Struber.
Championship, fine margins and everything like that. Katie, Struber, once you start speaking out against the Lansdowne, you're done for, really, aren't you? And he started doing that, but you know, is that fair enough? Do you think?
I'm going to be on Dave T's side. Unfortunately, on this, I'm going to be on Dave T's team, should we say? Yeah, obviously you can't come out and say things about. You can't say anything about Lansdowne. You can't say to him. You can't say anything about him. You're out the door. But I just want to go back on the point that Dave T is about injuries and also, selling the best players. I remember pre-January and speaking to the fans around me who I sit with and in my groups, and we were saying, how are we playing them? One of the most exciting football that we have in years under Struber. But we need a striker. And we all saw we were going to win in January. And in January came, we didn't get the striker. And then we also lost the key of Viner, and we went completely back in a completely different story if we just done what we said and got that striker and kept those players. Those players clearly didn't think that we were getting the strikers in as well. We've obviously then got rid of, was it 10 players to disrupt the changing room. Those players, there's been a lot of players that's been here for a long time, and then you've got players that have been here even longer that's going probably helped them when they came here. I know players come and go, but that amount of players leaving must affect a team and must affect players. And then you only get in 2 players, then all right, if he came in, but I don't think that would have even necessarily excited the players that were here. We have Horvath and Eli came here, and those players wouldn't have known those players. They might have seen clips like us of Horvath, but they don't know what they are like, or that they'll be as good as Anis, which they've seen every single day on the training field and for the past God knows how many years. So I do think that Struber was massively chucked under the bus with everything. He was sold that he was going to get a striker. We got Bergsorg in. I mean, none of us even need to discuss Bergsorg. We already
it's not.
we've had that discussion. Let's not get into that one as well. So yeah, I think it's really. I would have, like I said previously, I would have liked to have seen us back him without Tinian there as well, and see what he would have done in the summer, because Horvath and Eli, I think, is good additions. We just need more, and we need that striker still. And unfortunately, we do need to keep some of these players, the McCrories, the Knights. But now there are confidence that we're going to do that. They're not going to be. They're going to see this chaos and think, "I'm done with this."
Well, that's a good word. That's a good word there, Katie. Chaos. I like that. That was a word that Struber used. Tom, I think I'm in a minority here, sort of saying Struber, he's contributed to his own downfall. Tomo asked me the question, one of our regular contributors on the text, if Manning had this sort of run, 1 win in 8, would he have been moved on unceremoniously like they've done with Struber, with still 6 games to play? But your thoughts on Struber and dare I say the timing as well?
Yeah, I wrote down a couple of points so I didn't forget. I think this is one that's been said on the podcast many times in terms of how many games of football have you seen us play that are won and lost in both boxes, and the rest of the game is just pure propaganda, has been said on this podcast, right? And what do we have in both boxes at the moment, right? In the attacking side, we've got Emil Rees, a 1 in 3 player, and Sinclair Armstrong. And he's meant to deliver playoffs with that. In defence at the moment, we've got Tanner, Dickey, and Atkinson out for the season, I imagine, with Tanner. So we've got 2 left backs, at times Jason Knight and Noah Ayler to defend our box. I'm not sure what Roy Hodgson can do with that, to be honest. I mean, we all know he plays 4-4-2, is 4 at the back the way to go with those players. I don't know. And I think at the start of the season, right up until probably the Derby game, everyone at the club had a level of belief in them, from the fans to the players on the pitch, that they could get playoffs with the capability of the squad that they had. And after the sale of Anis and Zach and a team talk up, by the sounds of it, it was said on Sky, wasn't it? Gerhard delivered a team talk when they got sold. The wheels came off after that, in my opinion. And players, I think, play at their optimum when they are all united to a shared goal that they believe that they can genuinely achieve. And that just fell apart in January, in my opinion. So Gerhard, not perfect, but that's the context for me to put it all within.
Yeah, Adam, Gerhardt's been dealt a poor hand. So he's been the patsy for the inefficiencies of the Lansdowns. Let's put it like that. The Lansdowns and their Rasputin. That's the only word to describe him. Their Rasputin is Brian Tinian, but he was on hiding to nothing.
He's been dealt an impossible task from the get-go, Dave. He's banged on about the roster. Tom touched on Sinclair Armstrong there from the start. He's banged on about having a striker from pretty much the minute he's been in the door. He plays a certain way. You cannot, and going back to the point you said, he's not been perfect, But you cannot play the way he was playing pre-Christmas with what he's been left with the players that have gone, with the players that are injured. As Dave said, with Viner, he's probably one of the best in the division for breaking the lines. That was crucial to how we play. Obviously, Dickey can back that up as well. But you cannot dismantle a squad and then carry on playing the same way of football. The whole reason why he was banging on about the roster, you need 2 for every position. You need players to compete in those positions, to push each other so he can play the same way consistently. Plus, the type of way we play is burnout. So you need a squad. Surely even our illustrious owner should be able to see or understand if you're going to play a certain way with that intensity, you cannot just try and skip through when you've got injuries or players injured and blag it. And I think if you take, say, I know you mentioned Naylor, I'm not sure he's ready. I don't think he was assigned him to probably prop up the academy. But if you take him out the equation, bearing in mind Atkinson simply cannot and will not be able to play a 46-game season. We've been alternating between Borge, Pring, basically to cover Atkinson when he's injured, but also as our wing backs. It's just not enough. And yes, Struber's not been perfect. He's not been perfect, but the way in which the events have unfolded since January, there was no way he was going to be able to carry on playing that chaos ball, gegenpress. And you take Anis out, your top scorer. We needed a striker before Anis. So he goes, and then all of a sudden we have to rely on Armstrong even more. Where are the goals coming from? It's an impossible task, and I just think he's been hung out to dry with it. Whilst the form and performances have dropped, how do you carry that on? How do you progress that when you've had a fire sale in January and then unable to replace them with the players that we need? I think it was too much of a tall order. I really do.
Yeah, Richard, you did a table the other week showing the duration of weeks, with one exception, I think, at New York Red Bulls for Struber. He was booted out at Cologne with 2 games to go last season. He's gone here with 7 games to go. He's got to start having one of those CVs where you call him a bit of an employment butterfly. So, is he blameless? I mean, again, Ross McCrory can play as a central defender allegedly, where you could do a Sykes, McCrory, Ealer, Pring at left back. He's not tried to shake it up. You've got to show some adaptability when you're up against it sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Look, Struber's left us in the sweet spot of when he normally departs from clubs. Yeah. Take Red Bull out of this, New York. This is the sweet spot. It's around 40 weeks. I spoke earlier about death by 1,000 cuts, but Struber, I'm sorry to use this expression, is also self-harmed. Okay. So what's actually happened is we all saw that absolute S show where McCrory was cutting inside. Lo and behold, he then plays on his best foot and he was fine. Put players in the right position and you'll be fine. I'm very much a Struber fan, but you've got to be pragmatic. If I turn up for work on Monday and I find that 3 of my staff have handed their notice in, whilst I've got my principles, whilst I've got my way of working and the map to success, sometimes you've got to be pragmatic. All right, none of us wanted to see Anis go. None of us wanted to see Zach go. But the club did that because we didn't want to have another Jeju moment. We wanted to get some money for these players. I appreciate he's had injuries. I get that. But I just feel that the naivety around substitutes, the naivety of putting square pegs in round holes, the heavy metal football, which is so demanding. Look at Klopp in his first season at Liverpool. He was absolutely breaking the players. So Struber does have to take some accountability, but let's not forget, it's not his fault totally. It's not Lansdowne's fault totally. It's us, because we ruin clubs, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. How ridiculous that anybody could come out and say anything like that. I really do believe this is the start of the end for the Lansdownes. They're shuffling things around at the moment, trying to make it look like they've got, like I said the other week, air quotes, grown-ups in the room. Lansdowne sunk too much money into this club to get the return. We'd have to get in the Prem and stay there for probably 4 seasons for him to get his money back. Anybody see that happening anytime soon? Sorry, not me.
No, I don't think anybody in football ever gets their money back. It's a bottomless pit. You just want to be there and, maybe live off the interest and stuff like that. Neil, Struber, I think the general view is he's been dealt that rough hand, right? But, what is, if he's looking back, do you think he'd look to do anything different? Do you think he's a proud man and he sticks to his principles? Do you think his relationship with the players has deteriorated?
I think as somebody who's involved in local football clubs at local level, non-league level, what players want is they want consistency. They want to know what is happening, what the ideas are, what the process is moving forward. And right from the word go, this season has been a little bit chaos, hasn't it? We went into the season thinking, are we selling the club? Are we not selling the club? The Lansdownes have had it on for sale for 4 years. I went to the fans forum. Rawcliffe said what he said. Then Tinian went against it at the senior Reds just before Christmas. Then we had the Lansdowne sort of meetings. The players that are there are looking at the key players saying, well, are they going to sign or are they not going to sign? It was quite clear last summer they're not going to sign. Rawcliffe and Tinian came out and said, we're miles away from agreeing contracts. Well, where's your ambition? None of the players are actually going to sign on for this club if there's no ambition. If you're going out in the media and saying, look, we're not even going to sign these players on and just go, those 3 next year, Knight, McCrory, Bird, they're already out the door, aren't they? There's no way they're going to actually re-sign because the club's in complete chaos. And then you've got a situation where in January, Steve Lansdowne does the interviews he does, one with Radio Bristol and then one with Leroy in Rollins TV, which just basically goes, what is going on at the club? He's blaming everybody. And then he talks about the finances, doesn't he? Well, the 13 million from many, you don't get that in every year. Well, you do when the Alex Scott money got counted in 1 year. That's why we only lost 3.5 million this year. So
he was confusing cash with profit. And that's a clever account.
And then they are obviously looking to pull back to try and sell the club. But the reality is with selling a football club, it's only when they're distressed, isn't it?
That's the only time you sell a football club at a real value is when the owners run out of money. And Lansdowne's got enough money to carry on underwriting this loss and not change things.
So the players themselves, I'm sorry, Struber, yes, accountable. Some of the decision making, I don't get. Some of the substitutions, some of the game management, absolutely. And the others have spoken about it really, really well. But also just the chaos behind the scenes, and then Rawcliffe going, this guy that you put forward, right, we're going to do things properly. No, we've fallen out with that. It's just complete and utter chaos behind the scenes. And if you're a player now, you're like, what is going on?
It was WTF-IGO. Okay, Richard Scudamore. Everybody said that when Steve Cottrell joined the club, that was, and rest in peace, Keith Dawes' managerial appointment. In Richard Scudamore, City have got somebody who is known in the game. He's a figurehead in the Premier League. And he's a Bristol City fan. He should really, in my opinion, be executive chairman. Dave, the appointment of Charlie Boss, he's not an experienced guy, he's a sales guy. Yeah. He's not in the same league as Richard Gould, Dave Sexton. What's Sexton? Well, Colin Sexton. But this appointment of Roy Hodgson, that's got Scudamore's fingerprints all over it. And do you think Scudamore is pulling the strings without it being made official? He's got Lansdowne's ear right now, Dave.
It certainly suggests it, doesn't it? It certainly suggests that he's got a big part to play. I mean, I know that Hodgson has history here, but I wouldn't say necessarily knows that many people in the building. So it would suggest there's a pretty strong link there. And at the same time, with Charlie Boss, to me, that with everything that's happened with bringing him in, it says to me that things had to be done. And we are seeing the greatest of great resets. The whole structure looks like it's going to change. And I'm happy that in some senses they are admitting that they've been getting it wrong for the last, what feels like forever years. and it does need changes to take place. And I hope it does finish with Tinian leaving. I hope it finishes with Gillespie leaving, because I understand Tinian's demotion and there are reasons behind timing and things like that. But when the timing is right, he needs to go completely, because have some pride. Don't take a demotion. Go to another football club and prove us wrong. It doesn't make any sense. And as Katy said, he's still going to have the ear of people. He's still going to have the influence. Gillespie gets a free pass. He's another one that people need to look at his role. He needs to go. He's not been good enough. And by making these changes with Scudamore, by adding Charlie Boss, if we're going to do it, if we're going to start having accountability, if we can't do the owner, let's do everybody else, and let's clear the decks and actually start again with a little bit of professionalism. We can but hope.
And Scudamore, power behind the throne.
Yeah, most likely. I mean, we are probably opining on something we don't know entirely what's going on with this, but the signs are certainly there. Now, the big positive for me from yesterday, if we can look for positives, is in a bizarre way actually Roy Hodgson. And I believe he's Scudamore's man, because there's no links that I could see anywhere else. I don't think he's a positive in terms of coming in and getting 21 points from the next 7 games. That's not happening. We're not going down, we're not going up. That's absolutely fine. But if you look at the great reset that Dave has rightly alluded to, if you've got to get a sporting director in and you've got to get a head coach in, who the hell have you got with any kind of experience prior to Roy walking through the door who can actually implement those appointments? Charlie Boss was at the Jockey Club. He's had 1 year at Southampton commercially. He's not a football man. Brian Tinian's allegedly a football man, but I don't think we'd even go there. You look in that structure, you've had John Lansdowne, who has failed at appointments continually. You need somebody coming in who can actually come in, and Dave put this on the forum yesterday. You'll be familiar in your day job as recruitment. If you haven't got the expertise in the building to facilitate a recruitment, you get experts from the outside.
And sorry to interrupt, Dan, let me just say this. I think if they'd have said Roy Hodgson is coming in on a 6-month consultancy contract to see it through to the end of the season, because that often happens with companies. They get rid of somebody, they bring in a consultant while they're looking to redo the structure underneath. That would have made more sense to me if they just said he's coming initially for 6 months, so that this transition, because there is zero credible football knowledge at the top, that would be more, more
completely. But they're rubbish at communication. We know this. We employ 700 people in a comms department. I'm exaggerating, and then we can't even get sentences out coherently. But if you've got Roy Hodgson there, and let's put to bed the notion that people have that Roy Hodgson may be the new sporting director, you do not give a 78-year-old man a job of high stress and high importance over a long term. That isn't just raising the bar of incompetence, that's pole vaulting over it. You don't do that. He is here for a short time, for a good time, not for a long time. But what he can do is he can assess the footballing side of the operation, he can assess the squad, and he can be involved with him and Scudamore, involved in appointing a new sporting director and subsequently in appointing a manager. There is actually a positive side in respect to this, because you should have a lot of the expertise and a lot of the right people involved in making that decision. And the great thing about Roy Hodgson in this circumstance is he's got no skin in the game, because people like Tinian, if they were involved in the recruitment, they had skin in the game. It's the Peter principle. You try and you keep employing people to the level of incompetence. You don't employ threats. If you've got Roy Hodgson there, he's there to look at the club and he can say, right, this is the right man in my recommendation. I want Roy Hodgson on that panel of looking at who's coming in the next roles. And I think that's the positive from yesterday.
Katy, 78-year-old guy in charge, stressful situation. I mean, he didn't really need to come back. We've persuaded him. Somebody said Joe Jordan was asked and he declined, and that would have been probably as popular an appointment to come back. But do you think he'll hang around for longer than the 7 games? Would it be a good idea if he did? I'm not talking long term, because you don't need a figurehead and a sporting director and a first team coach. But what do you think? Him staying a bit longer?
I hope not. I really hope not. We've kind of I look at it as the last couple of years we've had a man in, and then we've had Struber here. We were told that we were going to have exciting new style of play football that these young managers in the game now are going to bring, because we have changed. The game has changed, and I'm quite happy to see that. And then suddenly now we've got Roy Hodgson, who is going to take us completely the opposite way back. I know it's only for 7 games, but you imagine he will come in and be asked to play his game that he's always played. You're not going to come in and say, can you play the same way as what Struber played, the same way of what Manning played? So you're asking him to come in and then ask players to play the complete opposite is what we were sold by the club that we wanted to play in future. With them saying that, admittedly, I'm not taking what they're saying, because clearly we've been slowing the dream, God knows how many times, by the Lansdowne. But you would think after 7 games that he would be gone, and they're going to look for what they call as a young, exciting manager, which they've told us they were going to do in the last couple of years. Not at all excited about watching Hodgson football in the next 7 games. In fact, there are a couple of occasions where I've been asked to go away, should we say, for the weekend, and things that I previously said, I might not be able to go to that because of City. I've already told them I'm going because there's definitely no way I'm excited to go down the gate and watch Hodgson football. That's a bit.
I mean, that's a bit harsh, but I'm not an aficionado in terms of the way he plays. Tom, standards. Standards. I think Dave said to me on the private chat. Standards and values was something from Roy's the announcement to do with Roy Hodgson being appointed. I mean, when he walks in the dressing room, forget his initial record here in 1982, 20 league games in charge, 3 wins, 5 draws, 12 defeats, didn't win any of the last 12 games that he was in charge. But when he walks in the dressing room, you're going to listen to him, aren't you? He's going to have a presence, yes?
Yeah, but I still think he obviously operates in the context that Struber has done, right? You've got a number of key players in that dressing room, and we don't know if they're going to be here next season. A number of them are on loan from other clubs. They've got realistically nothing left to play for this season. So I think even Roy Hodgson is going to have a tough task instilling standards. And I had another point as well. What does... he's 78, and I don't want to, this isn't necessarily a shot against Roy Hodgson, but it seems to be the truth. Understand he collapsed towards the end of his role at Crystal Palace in training, I think it was, whether that's true or not.
Twice.
What does the day-to-day of Roy Hodgson's job going to look like? Like, is he going to be on the training pitch teaching shape, being energetic, as you probably would need to do on the training? What does his role look like with his age? I just don't know.
No, that is interesting. Adam, somebody put a very cruel picture of Roy. What you can do with graphics these days. That's why I thought his announcement was a big thing. Sat in a wheelchair with a blanket around his on the training ground. I mean, he's not going to be a tracksuit manager. They got rid of Struber's number 2 as well. The only guy that's there who's got credible now on the training pitch is Fleming. Yeah. Do you think he'll bring in somebody fairly quickly that might be between jobs at the moment that can get out on that green grass and get some formations and lineups practiced, ready for what won't be an easy game against Nathan Jones's Charlton on Good Friday?
It won't be an easy game. I don't think he'll be very hands-on. I think that's for sure. Obviously, he will probably bring someone in short term. I think, as Ant says, I think we need to lead with the positives of the experience that he will bring. However, for me, it's just so frustrating that we're at this point where we get to the playoffs and then we've regressed so far back that then we now need to bring someone from the outside, a 78-year-old man in, and not be an ageist, to now help see how we move forward. Like, how have we arrived at this point? It's good in a way that there's an admission of failure. Going back to some points Dave said, for me, the whole thing needs to be gutted and we need to start again. We do need to lean on that experience Roy will bring, but are his philosophies going to align with where we want the club to go? How much can we lean on that? It's completely unknown territory. But going back to what you said at the start, I don't really know what he can do in those 7 games. As Tom said, I'm not sure what the day-to-day will look like. I think we're obviously not going to go up or down, but it's for me, it's so crucial we get this next phase right. It's difficult for Roy to come in because he said some players are already out the door. I just hope that we get it right and we get it right quickly, and we also don't start giving contracts out to players that we don't want there next season. Someone like Sam Bell needs to be moved
obviously
on.
goes to Mark. Richard, 78 is too old. Am I too old at 70 to try and manage a podcast with 7 contributors plus myself? Yeah, I know Fiona Bruce has trouble doing it with about 4 on a Thursday night. But do you think my idea that maybe they keep him around for 6 months to just bed it in? Tom made a point on the text feed. He didn't mention when he was talking, but Roy's got connections. Yeah, he is a well-known figure in the game. And one of the criticisms leveled at Brian Tinian, he's a not popular guy. He's not a hail fellow, well-met sort of character within football echelons. He doesn't get on with agents, so we're told, or certain agents. Yeah. What are your thoughts on, should it have been a longer appointment just to say we're going through a reset and we need this person here for 6 months, not 6/7 games?
Yeah, look, we've got form here, guys. As Forrest Gump said, stupid is what stupid does. There's no way that Charlie Final Boss has come in and made all these decisions. He's got the hands of Scudamore above it. I do believe that there is a risk here that he could hang around for a little while longer, not for years, clearly, but in terms of him, let's not paint him as a Dave Bassett type character, 4-4-2. Let's not do that, because he has got a lot of experience. What he is going to do for us immediately is he's going to create a situation whereby the players are going to be well drilled. They're going to be organised. You're not going to see Struber ball. You're going to see the low block, okay? And the reason for that is quite clear. The relegation word, all right? We're all sat here saying, no, we're not going down. We're not going down. 2012, Peterborough United got relegated from the Championship on 54 points. We're currently on 51. I don't believe we'll go down. Sheffield Wednesday are bust already, okay? You've got Oxford that are probably down as well. I believe that there are enough clubs below us that are worse than us. I agree with you, Dave, that what we should have done is been more transparent at the front end and said, look, Roy is not a track-suited manager. He's not going to be at the high performance centre, doing training drills. He's the consultant. He's here to help shape the future. I think that's where the comms has mismatched the expectation of him.
Neil, your thoughts?
I mean, I've been told some big arguments behind the scenes with Scudamore and John Lansdowne.
Yeah.
There's some real issues there and some real power sort of moves going on there with relation to it. I think that going back to those interviews of Steve, back in January before the Derby game, where he did his own sort of Lego movie impression, didn't he? Everything is awesome. Everything is great. Recruitment second to none. Everything's fantastic. Less than 2 months later, he's sacked the chief executive. He's sacked everybody. Everything's complete chaos. He's just so many mixed messages all over the place, isn't it? And he's basically admitted that for the last 11 years in the Championship, where we wasted so many opportunities, hundreds of millions of pounds, that actually we don't know what we're doing. So we're going to need people to bring in to actually sort of say it's a complete rollback from his position less than 2 months ago. And that in itself just gives out so many mixed messages to people, isn't it? Scudamore coming in has probably told him, you're an absolute cluster. We need to change it. And we've made this decision to do it with 7 games left in the season to go. But I can't see what Roy can do with the players that he actually has. Hence why they've spoken about what Roy's going to do is he's going to use the pathway and use the academy. And that's people talking that have no idea what players Roy actually has available to him in the academy. That's the disconnect. The reality, we've all seen it and we've spoken about it on the podcast. So the reality of where Bristol City is with the players, with the ambition, with the contracts, whatever, is completely at odds with what, you know, the owner and the chairman think of the club. And that's just come to the fore in the last 2 months, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Less than 2 months ago, he said recruitment second to none. We're a fantastic club. This squad is the best that it's ever been. And we're all sitting there thinking, what are you on about?
Yeah.
What are you on about? You're absolutely delusional about this situation. And somebody, and I'm guessing it's Scudamore, has had to tell him, you are delusional. That is not the case. And there's been a real reality check. You've got Steve Lansdowne Senior Reds next week, haven't you?
Next month, but I won't be going.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you can go.
Oh, I don't know on that.
You're old enough to go.
But yeah, I mean, is it? What's it? May I ask? You had Sean
Gilhespie was the speaker at this week's Senior Reds and said the square root of F all, really. Ian did the Q&A with him because, quote, this is Mr. Gay, he facilitated the meeting. And Sean's probably a very nice guy, but I mean, you know, can you imagine being managed by Brian Tinian? But Sean's been there ever since he graduated, yeah. So his vision outside, and this was said in a public domain. How many reports on players do you think that they assembled in the last 12 months at Ashton Gate? How many players do you think that they've got on their database? Just give me a number. I come to you, Dave. How many players do you think they analysed?
Bergzorg.
No, how many number? No, very good. Right. This was said at Senior Reds, 9,500 players. Right. And I said when he sat, because I was sat at the same table with him, on the same table as Ian, I may hasten to add. I had to stop Mel from throttling him, although we were very civil. I said, you have all that analysis, but you still end up with somebody like Delano Berzorg. How does that work? And then the other thing,
George Earthley.
Well, George Earthley, that was a waste of money. But I think the thing is, you know, they and one of the other questions was, how do you get under the DNA of the players? That's to use a Mark Ashton phrase. He's backtracking on his little thing that he did at Ipswich this week, isn't he? If you've all seen the news, how do you get and work out what a player is like off the field? Because to me, Delano Bergzorg, if you drive a bloody Lamborghini, you're an overpaid flash bastard. There we go. I've said it now. And I drive a Timu Range Rover, just so if anybody's interested. There we go. Let's look. We got to look forward. Dave, the pre-season really starts now, doesn't it? And do you think that both of these positions, it would be good to have them sorted with maybe 3 games to go, so we can get some evaluation done of who's coming, who's going, and let's get Knight signed up to a new contract or get him out the door. The next 3 weeks are vital. If we'd have left things like this until the first week of May, I think next season would have been a disaster. But here we are, last week of March, things have got to happen. Do you think that we'll get those 2 appointments done before the end of the season, maybe with 3 games to go?
I would imagine that the sporting director is probably already done. They just haven't told us about it yet. But I would imagine that it's pretty much done. And in terms of the manager, honestly, I've got no idea. In terms of what the club do, I don't exactly have faith in them moving quickly. But pre-season does begin now. Supposedly, we're bringing in someone that can, and in Hodgson, that will help implement the right standards and values. I mean, what does that tell you? It sounds like clever jargon, but you kind of need that in the building already. Like, it doesn't make any sense to use that phrase. And yes, you're right. It is basically pre-season now. And what I would say to fans is that when it comes down to it, people buy their season ticket because it's what they do, because football matters and it's a key thing to everybody's life. Yeah. But I really hope that people will really think, can I just wait? Make my point, make them sweat, make the numbers be terrible. Is that possible? You know, is there a way that you can say, you know what, I'm not going to get it in week 1? Because normally they try and threaten you and say, well, if you do it in the first 2.5 days, you get the price, but after that it goes up. Well, what are they going to do if half the fan base say, you know what, I'm going to wait and see who you pick first. Because this is the future of the football club. Yes, you are with your football club through good and through bad. But right now, it is an ownership that treats their fan base with contempt, a severe lack of respect. And the only way that a fan base can push back is say, I love my football club, but I'm not giving you money. Look at what Sheffield Wednesday did. They literally said, we're not going to turn up. That's what it's like right now. They've got to pick people, and it's not good enough to say, give me your money and we might pick a good sporting director. We might pick a good manager. No, no, no. Show us first. Show us what you're made of. Show us your intent. And maybe, just maybe, you're worth our time, because the lot of them are a joke.
Yeah, yeah. And this really is a critical moment for the club, isn't it? I mean, it's not quite anything like 1982 when Roy was here last time, and the Land of Make Believe was in the charts by Bucks Fizz. Lansdown's got to fundamentally either sell up or relax the purse strings or do something. And Dave's absolutely right with season tickets. What's the selling proposition for next season? Championship football, whoopee-doo. Might have Tottenham Hotspur as a star game, but you can pick your game. Go and watch Tottenham play at Ashton Gate next season. But I'll say the next 4 weeks are critical.
Yeah, I mean, in your Lansdowne point, to carry on the analogy, there comes a time for making your mind up, as Bucks Fizz will tell you. He needs to, as we said before, shit or get off the pot in quite a lot of times here. Now, again, with the next 4 weeks, I'm going to say again, Roy Hodgson, we've got to just not view him as he's the interim head coach and let's see how he plays football for 7 games, because those 7 games are gone. And yes, there is the minute possibility of relegation, but it would require teams reversing their form in multiple occasions below us. But I'm not worried necessarily about the next 7 games. I'm expecting us to pick up a point here, a point there, but nothing major. Now, it is an extended pre-season. It is absolutely an extended pre-season. And yes, we do need these positions filled as soon as possible, because you want to make sure that you give yourself as much of a ramp as possible. One of the joys about our season, effectively having finished a few weeks ago, is you should be in a position where you know what your recruitment's going to be, you know where you go, and you should be able to plan accordingly. This has thrown it a little bit of a loop, but it shouldn't have thrown it that much of a loop. Because when you talk about those 9,500 players, which actually, to be honest, I'm not worried about that number, because I think you have all those going, and when you probably boil it down, you end up with less than 1,000 that you're concentrating a lot of resource on, say, right, are they suitable? Just about data filtration, and that's just a number to try and impress people, which has the opposite impact. When you have managers going, if you have a football club which has a philosophy and a way of playing and is run correctly, as soon as Gerhard Struber was appointed, there should have been, right, who comes after him? Should have been the conversation. It should have looked at, right, who comes after Gerhard Struber? Who's the next guy we're going to appoint when this guy goes? Because unless something is massively wrong when you get rid of your head coach, you shouldn't be doing 180s. But if you go back, Dean Holden, nice human being, coach, wet behind the ears. Left at sharp turn, Nigel Pearson, absolute ball breaker, club builder, knows what he's doing, uses academy, gets people through. Brilliant. Sharp turn, Liam Manning. Okay, whether you like him, dislike him, whatever, negative, generally boring football, will not use academy. Sharp turn from Pryor. Sharp turn, Gerhard Struber, heavy metal football, playing with pace. Now, this is incoherent. It's incoherent all the way through. And this is why you end up with a squad that contains both Fally Miulu and Jason Knight, because you have high energy players and low energy players, because there's not a coherent strategy. So the reason you need that sporting director, and then hopefully Rob moving in recruitment quickly, is it starts to give you that degree of coherence. That degree of coherence isn't there yet. And it absolutely has to be. And if you want to get down to the root cause of our problems, in addition to Steve Lansdowne, in addition to John Lansdowne, it is the fact we have a markedly incoherent approach to appointing managers and continuation. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
Katie, what will make you... Are you going to buy a season ticket?
Yeah, I mean, I probably the thing is with me is that it's not necessarily just what's going on the pitch. So I have 2 kids. My husband goes, my mum and dad goes, my brother goes, my aunties and uncles. So there's a huge, part in a block that goes. So it's more of a, should we say, a family thing that we do together. So that's kind of what sways me every year. Of course, I love the club. I love the football, normally anyway. But I will buy a season ticket. But this is probably the first year I have. I'm going to spend 4 season tickets. Should I do it? It has questioned it, but there are a part of me that's what we do. We go to football. That's our family activity. Usually, going back to your question about whether we think we're going to get someone in before the 7 games are up, I think Dave is right with what he said. I think we'll get a Sporting in. If not, they probably have already got him in, and they're going through the processes of thinking things through, how they're going to relay that news and who's going to stay, who's going to, maybe they want to do maybe he's got someone else that is helping him guide him. I don't know, but I don't see us getting them, or at least revealing manager until summer, till this season is over. And that really worries me for recruitment going forward, because if I'm a player somewhere else coming in, okay, Roy's here, he will have good connections, but they know he's not going to be here in the summer. They've been told, like us, he's not going to be here in the summer. So why would I sign for a club knowing that manager is not going to be here? I don't know who I'm playing for. Someone might come in and I'd not like them. I might not fit into their style of play. No one's going to sign until we know who is here. You might be able to get in bells, which we don't want, to sign a contract. But McCrory, and especially if McCrory goes to the US at World Cup level, he's going to have teams coming looking at him. And I would blame him for not even thinking, why would I sign? Who's going to be here? Am I going to play? Am I going to be played out of position again? So it worries me for next year, just because of that recruitment. How long is it going to take then in the summer? Are they going to take 2 months to get a manager in?
No, it isn't.
No.
Well, it took 6 weeks, didn't we? And that's how we ended up with Dean Holden. Tom, the relationship between sporting director and head coach, to use the phrase, is quite toxic. A lot of clubs. Ant talks about the coherence, and I think the merry-go-round of Championship football in strategy, people change their managers very, very, very regularly. Now, whether they change managers and they maintain the style so we don't get runners or, possession-based players. But if we get, are there any, there's only one sporting director that I can think of, and I know Richard did an analysis of this. There's one that's come up in my head who's got a Roy Hodgson connection. And that's Dougie Friedman, who's currently out in Saudi Arabia. He was at Crystal Palace for a very long time. And when Phil Alexander was chief executive at Crystal Palace, Phil Alexander did everything at Crystal Palace that Charlie Boss does here at Ashton Gate. Phil Alexander was a commercial guy, but Dougie Friedman did everything to do with the playing side. Now, if we say sporting director with Rob Newman as head of recruitment underneath, because Rob Newman's breadth maybe isn't enough to be the sporting director, do you then think we'd end up with a rookie manager? I mean, a rookie head coach. A few people have been putting some names out on the text feed here, and on OTIV last night. Steve Gerrard's very close to very close to Hodgson. I wouldn't be overly excited about that because managerially he's been a dead duck. But you've got Machino, who's at Portsmouth. Somebody even mentioned the one that Lansdown's always coveted, Robbins. How do we get this balance right between a sporting director and a chief and a head coach?
I don't know is my honest answer to that question. And I think it's something I said when they announced that they were looking for a sporting director. But quite honestly, I think that role only succeeds if they're given the freedom to do their job properly and the budget in order to sign players that, you know, are at their philosophy and the level that we need. I just wanted to bring in another point as well. We've obviously got, to try and hopefully be a bit positive, we've got some money from Semenyo that we can spend that I imagine Lansdowne hasn't budgeted for in his plans to invest in Bristol City. And we're looking, I think, at a potential sale from Bournemouth of Alex Scott in the summer as well. So we could serve to get some money out of that. So maybe there is some money, might be some money in the coffers after all. But I guess we'll see if Steve wants to spend it.
Yeah, Adam, your thoughts on the next few weeks, and you know, is it vital to get this stuff bedded in now rather than May? And you know, people have to move. Well, they don't move house; they just move down to the area. You know, it's got to be. We got to move fairly quickly, I think.
As quick as possible, but we obviously want it to be the right move. So if it does take a little longer, fine. But ultimately, we do need to move quickly. I think for me, it's Tom says it. Are we going to make sure that we're backing the person that is in charge? There's no good in making all these changes behind the scenes to the back boardroom, etc. If we're not going to back the manager on the pitch. So it's great going through all these changes, which are needed, and it does need to be done quickly. But if we make all these great changes and then those people in their roles aren't allowed to do their jobs and everyone's not aligned, it's kind of irrelevant. So it all needs to be done quickly, but we need to get the right man in on a football side as well. And that person needs to be backed, and he needs to be backed healthily, going back to way back at the start from what Ant was saying. We're not talking about 1 or 2 million here on players. Like, we need to invest heavily. Bearing in mind, if we're going to need sort of anything in the realms of 8 to 10 players, regardless of who comes in. So whoever comes in is going to need to be backed well and back with quality as well. So yeah, if I had my way, I would want it done quickly. Any half decent organisation would have stuff in place or plans in place. Hopefully the sporting director's already in there, but let's just hope it's not 6 weeks.
Yeah. And I just to jump in on something, because I think Adam makes a good point. Like, the football club hear that word alignment, and I don't think they know what it means. I think they have this impression that, like, you have to agree on absolutely every single thing, and if you disagree on something, you're out the door. Now, what you need is an alignment of a principle, of an idea of what you're trying to achieve, as Ant spoke about, like just randomly making things up. But you also want it that it's okay for everybody in that building to question things, to go against things in an honest working environment. What you don't need are certain people in the building then leaking to their friends on social media, going against the PR machine. It's okay for those people to have in-house discussions. We know far too much as a fan base, because of certain people online that have ways in-house. That's actually a negative for the club, because they don't treat it as alignment and honest conversations. They are more interested in being right. And I'll give you one example. Brentford. Keith Andrews this season, when they appointed him, they were like, what are you doing? Among a lot of people. There aren't too many people in football that didn't have them to go down. But the point is, they had a plan of succession. They knew that when Frank left, he was the next guy. I don't care what the plan is. I just want it to be a plan, and I will judge if I like it or not based on what happens. I'm not going to make a prejudgment. Nobody should. Right now, looking at this season, we cannot say that those people above have done a good job. It's just impossible. They definitely didn't have a plan, because they wouldn't be doing this right now. Yeah. Be open, be aligned, but be honest with each other and develop a little bit of thicker skin, so when people do speak out and say things are having issues, like Struber was with the academy, it's not like, right, Chow, you spoke out against us. That interview revealed so much about Lansdowne and the way it's run. He speaks out and I correct him. You're not an overlord, for goodness sake. You're not Darth Vader. People are allowed to have opinions. It's healthy to disagree when done in the right way. In the right way.
Richard, you look at the sporting director coming in. I mean, you've got the cost of having to replace, even if we sell them, the cost of having to replace McCrory, Knight and Bird in the summer, if they don't sign, is going to be greater than the cost of giving them wages that they might get elsewhere. Based on their form this season, none of them are going to go stellar up to Premier League. fact. Equally, playing the loan market next season could be vital as well, because you could get in 4 Premier League loan players just to help that sort of transition to get the academy up and running again properly. There's so much to do in a very short window, isn't there, though? All of it, just getting those players tied down.
Absolutely. I'm going to try and answer this using your Bucks Fizz analogies earlier, David. Okay, so number one, making your mind up. That's where we're at the moment. This club does not have a football strategy. Okay, it has not had a football strategy for God knows how long. Lansdowne is not prepared to fund this football club. He's prepared to fund the losses. Full stop. We are in the land of make-believe if we believe anything other than that, gentlemen. We now have a situation whereby the appointment of the head coach, because I think that's what we're going to find we get. We won't get a manager as such, okay? The appointment of the head coach will be dependent upon who the sporting director is. Now, whether that gives us here's a random Bucks Fizz song, a new beginning, I don't know. We have got very, very little time. But my message from today is for the Lansdowns. I really believe that for the good of them, for the good of this football club, for our future prosperity, if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. Because quite frankly, whatever happens now, the Lansdowne should not be at the head of this club. They do not have the capability, the financial ability, or the capability to take this club forward. All we're doing is shuffling the deck chairs around at the moment. We're not resolving things.
I totally agree with that, Neil. Yeah,
I think the only way we get a positive reaction to this situation is if Steve Lansdowne does another interview and he goes, mea culpa, I've got things wrong. And I've learned, I've listened, we need to do things differently. I need to do things differently. And we're all going to move forward. And like the word that's been used, alignment, I just can't see it.
No.
There's a man who in January said it's my club, basically. Do things
my way or the highway.
My way, and he does not see the problems. And 2 months later on, you can appoint the best sporting director in the world, the best head of recruitment in the world. If you don't change your mindset and you don't change the way that you do things, and you don't see the part of the problem is inside yourself, there's no self-reflection from him, is there? No. There's no turning around now and saying, I got things wrong, so wrong back in January. And I just can't see it. But that's the one thing this club needs. The one thing this club needs is the chairman the chairman, John Lansdowne. Invisible. But it needs the owner to come forward now and throw himself almost at the feet of the fans and just say, look, we've made mistakes in the last 10 years. We've done things badly. We could have done things better. I've made mistakes. Moving forward, let's all move forward together. I've listened to you. I've listened to others. Things are going to change. I just can't see.
I mean, when you say Richard, when you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. Lansdowne is very thick-skinned, and this is the doom loop that I've been alluding to. We're in a situation where, as a club, we're losing £20 million a year before any player sales. Now, Dave Febbs was feeding me some accounts figures coming out. The going rate for Championship football clubs losing money is in the range 15 to 20 million a year. And you look at your Millwalls and people like that. Lansdowne will continue to. He's so thick-skinned, I think, that he will continue to put in maybe 10 million a year. He only put in 7 last year. He'll put that in, and if we do get a player sale, right, that will just reduce that losses in the particular year. The thing is, we've had 12. Next year will be our 12th successive season at this level. In years gone by, we've usually dropped down. As fans, we had a taste of what the big time looked like by getting to the playoffs, even though we were an absolute disaster in them. I mean, one question, I think we're almost heading towards the end of the day. Do you see Lansdowne selling this football club in whole or part? And by part, I mean let 50% stake. Like, look what they've done with the women's football club. Mercury 13 have got that. They've got an 80% stake in the football club. They're running it well. They've been out and signed some good players. Hopefully they can get to the WSL and what have you. They beat the leaders, Charlton, Ashton Gate the other Sunday. I think they got Birmingham this weekend, so he was telling me. Do you think the appointment of Hodgson has done something to put us in the shop window? Is this all part of a subliminal sale process to heighten the profile of the club? Would you have felt differently if Sam Allardyce had been brought in for the last 6 games of the season?
No, they bring, if it's not looking long term, they bring in who they bring in, and I think it hasn't. They were expecting some kind of the unfinished business line to promote season tickets or whatever going forward. My question is, as a question myself, shall I say, to answer your question, does he want to sell? Because I don't think so. I think that his worst case scenario, his worst nightmare, and he probably wakes up every morning shivering with this nightmare, is that he does sell the club and the person he sells to is actually successful.
Yeah.
He would hate that. For all the things he talks about, and a great chairman, great owner, wanting the best for the football club, he would despise that with a passion because that's how big his ego is. Really speaking, he's a guy that has enough control over different things. He and the rugby club as a package and leave the football club on its own. We have to bear in mind he has that kind of power if he so wished. But I don't think he wants to sell because I think he wants to be the guy. And when he talks about minor things that stopped him from selling, actually they're quite big things if they stop you selling a multi-million-pound football club. So I don't really think he wants to sell because I think he sees it as him or nobody.
All right, Ant, good point by Dave.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much spot on. Do I think he wants to sell it? Absolutely not. And we can go through what the minor things were potentially. We've got freeholder ground, we've got keeping John in situ, we've got name on the stand, etc., etc., etc. They're minor things, but they're important to him, I think was the full phrase. And he doesn't want to sell this club. I think he possibly doesn't want to sell this club for a slightly different reason to what Dave says. I don't think he actually cares about this club being successful. Because if you cared about this club being successful, you'd have funded it properly. You don't get into football to not make a loss. That's naive in the extreme. I think there's a strong case to be made that actually his real love is with the Bears rather than anything else. And that's absolutely fine. We facilitate the Bears playing in a better stadium because the money that would have been spent to redevelop the Memorial Ground would have been huge. He just happened to get here first. I don't think he actually really, truly gives a flying one about us being successful as a club. What he does give a lot of care and attention to is being proven right. That's why when he sacked Nigel Pearson and Liam Manning was in trouble, Liam Manning got given lots of money. That's why Lee Johnson got funded, because actually it's a friend, it's a young manager, and that I can be seen as the one who's got the glory there. If he really, really, truly cared about us doing well, he would have funded the managers he didn't fund. It's an ego trip, and it's pure and simple. And I agree with what everyone said. It should be the thing to get him out of the club eventually. I don't think he's going anywhere. And that is a major problem. It's going to hamstring us going forward. Because although I can be positive about the steps which may be being taken in terms of getting a coherent structure in, if you've got a guy at the top like that, you're probably never going to be a success.
Yeah. Katie, do you think he'll be here this time next year?
Yeah, I think so. I agree. I don't think he wants to sell this club at all. I heard a few people on a couple of other podcasts as well saying that he's overpriced the club as well. Maybe he's done that because he doesn't want to sell it. If you're really that desperate to sell it, or some investors in because you want good for the club, you not necessarily would bring it down under his evaluation, but you'd, if you're buying a house, you tend to go just under and then you buy it. But it sounds like from what Pierre that he's massively overpriced it. I think someone said on a podcast today that he's valued it at the same price that Newcastle sold Newcastle to the Saudis a couple of years ago, which is absolutely mental. We're nowhere near, I get that they're probably, you have to look at finances, debt, things like that. But we're in a good position with certain things, but the prospect of the club, just them being in the Premier League, the potential for things like Champions League, Europa, things like that, we're massively behind that. So if you're trying to sell a club that's got the same amount of money as what a club who you could in theory get to a position where Newcastle are, he really doesn't want to sell it.
No, I think that's true. And as I've said on this podcast many times, I think I'd like to sell my house for 1.5 million. Yes, David, but the most expensive house in your street has only been sold for 1.1. Yeah, but I've got solar panels and gold-plated taps. Doesn't make any difference. There's a market price for the club. Tom, is he arrogant enough to bring in Lee Johnson as sporting director and Rob Newman as head of recruitment, and maybe Lewis Carey, who was at the 1986 last night, as chief coach? I mean, we got form when it comes to bringing back old boys. I mean, you look at that good old Lee, who's doing a half-decent job at Lommel, Belgian League 2. Is he that arrogant? Because I think he's got, just by that comment, fans are in football, I think he's got a degree of contempt towards us now, that we're the bad guys. So he could do up yours. Lee Johnson's my sporting director, and Uncle Pete, he's the recruitment director.
Yeah, I think a good question to ask, probably to everyone watching and yourselves on the podcast, is what does the world look like according to Steve Lansdown? Like, what does he think when he wakes up in the morning about the assets in the sporting clubs that he owns, in the direction that they're going in, and what needs to happen? Like, where does he get his information and news from and stuff like that? I'd be intrigued, and I think that's ultimately what the future of the football club depends on, isn't it? It's what does the world look like according to Steve Lansdown, right? And we spoke, a couple of people raised like selling your house for a certain price or whatever. I think we had a buyer willing to pay the price that he put for the club last season. So I don't even think it's a money thing by his actions based on that last year. And I think that's the ultimate judgment you can cast on him, really, is his actions, right? Like the interview he gave after the sack the board chants in the stadium, back in January before the Derby game, and then we've just had a manager sacked after some chants in the stand in the last game as well. So yeah, be interesting.
Adam, he wouldn't bring back Lee Johnson and say sod you all. He's my man. He's backed him in the transfer market like no other manager.
Absolutely not. But this is part of the problem. Like Lansdown until now, he's basically ran it like a hobby for him and his mates. So what is going to change, or what has anyone seen during his tenure for that to now change? My only hope is that with Scudamore and potentially calling him out on some things, we may at least be run a little bit more professionally. But the guy doesn't want to sell. As others have already mentioned, he doesn't want to sell. This is his control, how he wants it done. I just can't see him relinquishing it anytime soon. And as others have mentioned, it's not about the money. With the potential investors or people that have looked to buy the club that we've heard of, I can't see how they wouldn't have been able to afford the club. It's the things the little things that have, as we've touched on, have transpired are actually very, very big things. Yeah. So he doesn't want to sell the club. Please no, Lee Johnson. But look, I'm not going to sit here today and say anything's impossible under him anymore. I'm really not.
Appointing Lee Johnson is probably not as bonkers as bringing Roy Hodgson in. Richard, your thoughts on that? That he's got the money. He can carry on chucking it in. It's a play thing to him. What does he wake up and think about in the morning? Well, he's got his Botswana interest. He's got a rugby club. He's got his Guernsey golf club that he's spending lots of money over there. He's got many, many, many things going on. He probably taps into John. How's it going up at the HPC, John? Oh, great. Fine. Brian's telling me everything's good behind the scenes. Something's got to change, hasn't it?
Absolutely. I would argue that Lansdown is not thick-skinned. He's actually very thin-skinned. Okay, the membrane is very, very thin, because this is a man that is very much hurt by some songs and a bit of booing. The problem that we have got is that he's digging in. He's not looking to go. The only way you're going to remove Lansdowne is economically. All right. So that means don't rush to buy the season ticket. Don't go in the concourse and buy your beers and don't go in the club shop. You've got to hurt him economically. When you look at the vanity project, you know that thing called Lansdowne Sport? Sorry, Bristol Sport. The rugby doesn't make money. It's not a question of if we finish in 7th, we make a lot more money than if we finish in 10th. Bristol City Football Club is the one that's got the costs for Lansdowne Sport. Consequently, that prevents us from growing. He's digging in. The only way we're going to get him out is economically. A few boos will just mean he'll go and sack someone.
Yeah.
That's the way forward for us, okay?
Yeah, he economically, he's got so much money, Neil, that it doesn't. He can carry on losing 10 million a year for the next 10 years.
Well, going back to your Lee Johnson analogy, that he backed Lee Johnson. Actually, if you look at it, during Lee Johnson's reign, we got about 90 million in player sales, and then he spent 60 million of it. So we were still a net receiver rather than a net spender that time. And he's reined back on the money that he could put in. That's his prerogative at the end of the day. But FFP allows him to put more money in than he's currently putting in. Again, that's his prerogative. It's his money. He converts it. But I can't see that we've made the decisions that we have in the last 2 or 3. Well, yesterday, in essence, none of that is akin to him selling, is it?
No.
You don't create a complete new system with inside a club and then sell it straight afterwards.
No.
So the actual trust and belief with inside the fan base for Lansdowne has gone now, I think. And going back to it, the only way things are changing, the only way the belief of the fans that there is going to be effective change, if he is going to stay, and I think he is going to stay, because why do you bring a sporting director in? Why do you bring Roy Hodgson in? Why do you make all these changes behind the scene if you're going to sell? Because the new people might come in and go, I don't want that. So nothing's imminent with regards to a sale from my perspective. And he goes in, and then what, Steve? Are you going to fund this? Are you going to really...
What's going to change?
What's going to change? And that's where everybody is. Now, the economics of season tickets, it's small change, David.
In the overall scheme of things.
In the overall scheme of things, 15,000 season ticket holders.
If 20% of them don't bother going, it doesn't impact that much.
What's that, £1 million?
Yeah.
I mean, we're maximising our turnover. We had the largest, season before last, we had the largest turnover of any non-parachute club in the division.
Yeah.
But our operating costs were so high that we were making a loss even before we start. Nobody has ever asked Steve Lansdowne, why did we lose 20 odd million a season? Steve, you're an accountant. Tell us why we are.
No, but if you strip, this is where you break out the accounts, and I was chatting to Dave Febbs a lot this week. You break out the accounts, you look at the football club in isolation, and then that's where you've got like about 25 million and a wage bill about 10. There's about 10 million loss in there. But then when you look at holdings, you bring in 10 million of extra costs associated with Ashton Gate Limited and everything like that. So it's a mess.
It's a mess, but with it as well, I work with a lot of Bristol Bears season ticket holders, and their salary cap is 7 million in the Premiership. That's the salary
and
cap.
He's paying 5.
And he's paying 5.5.
Yeah.
So he's trying to do things on the cheap with the Bears, and he's trying to do things on the cheap.
Well, and Dave Febbs showed me this a few years ago. We had a wage bill that was in the top 8, based on accounts now for clubs coming out to 2025. We slipped right down to 15th or 16th.
Lower, you could argue we're outperforming that with that team.
We are outperforming. Somebody said to me yesterday. Somebody said to me yesterday, the worst thing that happened was Luton get into the Premier League because they did it on gates of £10,000. They got there for one season. What we wouldn't give for just one season there, we'd probably come straight back down. But just have it for one season. That was the worst thing that happened. Because he looks at that and thinks, well, if Luton can do it, so can we. But as Gavin Marshall said when I did an interview with him 2 years ago, Gavin Marshall, who's no longer there, our policy is based on, quote, hoping the stars align. That is the strategy, that we get lucky. We do a Blackpool. They had one season in the Premier League about 15 years ago. We're bigger than that. And this is where I keep coming back to Brentford, Bournemouth and Brighton. right? That's where I've got an envy factor. Now, I don't know if anybody's seen this. It was posted up. There's a peaceful protest before the next home game against Sheffield United. Meet from 1:30 outside the stadium. Peaceful gathering with banners, flags, no chants, no pitch invasion, no disruption of the match itself, no abuse toward players. Suggested messages on banners and flags: ambition, not austerity. Lansdowne, we want promotion. Lansdowne out, we want promotion. Thank you for the stadium. Now build a squad. Fans deserve better. I mean, that sort of protest is a waste of time.
But I think with it, we need
We've got to do it.
look at ourselves as a club a little bit and stop going on about our facilities. Those facilities have been there for 10 years. We can't get. And if you look at the accounts, there's a depreciation on them. So the stadium already isn't worth what it was when we built it, because we're factoring in a depreciation into the accounts. And but it's still going down in the thing. And then you're talking about the academy. Delusional about the academy.
Well, it's a mess.
Oh, it's a fantastic. And recruitment second to none. Absolutely delusional. So we've got to change the mindset, and the change of the mindset comes from Lansdowne.
Yeah. And when he talks about bringing investment, it's like, Dave, if I said to you, do you want to invest in my house? And you'd say yes. And I say, well, look, Dave, I'll give you 40% interest in my house, right? Because I've got 60%, I'm still going to decide what colour of the paint is that goes on the wall and how long I want my grass. That's never going to work. You have to have control if you're going to run the football club. Does everybody agree with that? That no outside investor is going to come in and not have 100% say, which can be had by 51%. But that's the only way things are going to change.
Can you imagine that discussion though? If someone had that thing of say 25, 30%, so what you're going to offer me? 12th place for the next 10 years. I mean, the person's going to want control if they're going to put money in, because they're going to want to put their own ideas in.
Exactly. That is the fundamental thing. So he's got to surrender it. No way is he going to get his money back. And anybody coming in, if you're putting in a deal to buy the club, you've almost got to do it in a way that's deferred. You say, Steve, if we get promoted to the Premier League, we'll give you a ground rent of £10 million per annum instead of the current 2. Yeah. And actually, you know, each year that we stay in the Premier League, hopefully it'll be more than 1, right? But we'll give you deferred consideration for the sale of the club. I don't know. Right, look, let's wrap up. Anybody, let's take a final word from each of you as to how we feel on this bright, sunny day. Dave, we're going into the international break. Well, it's less than a week until the next game against Charlton, Nathan Jones. How are you feeling now? You had a chance to reflect on yesterday's events overnight. How are you feeling?
Curious, to be honest. I'm curious to how this plays out in the next 6 to 7 games. What it looks like. I mean, my break from Bristol City got ruined. I was looking forward to 2 weeks of peace and quiet, not having to think about the losing both boxes, the propaganda. But no, Bristol City don't do that. They drag you in even when you're out. But I am curious to see just what it looks like and what changes Hodgson makes, because I assume he will go 4-4-2. Some fans have been asking for that, so let's see what happens. And there we are.
Okay.
Has Tony himself
your thoughts?
the question?
Sorry, I'll do it in rotation. Sorry, Katie. And your
That was fine. I was
views.
saying to Dave, that's all. I was saying Dave about continue forward, that's all. So he hasn't said it today.
Continue, that's full. Dave. Anne, sorry, Anne.
No, that's all right. I'm probably more concerned about the longer term rather than the short term. As I said, I'm not necessarily that worried about the next 7 games. I'll be interested to see how we get set up, but passing interest is dwarfed by the broader, bigger picture, which is what we really do need to focus on. The phrase that keeps coming to my mind is, I don't know if you've seen, I think it's Gattuso, when he was asked, what's it like? Sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit. We are erring towards the second side of that on a very, very frequent basis. And the other phrase is the Conte one, which is one normal day at this football club. That's all I ask. And it just never comes.
Yeah. Never a dull moment, Katie, is there?
No, not supporting this football club. To be honest, I'm just confused at the moment. I agree with Anne. I think my worry is for the summer and onwards. the rest of this season is, I know, like Richard said, technically we're not mathematically safe, but in myself I feel like we'll be okay with that. So I'm more worried about recruitment and, you know, how we're going to get 8 to 10 players minimum in the summer. So the same, I'm confused, but at the same time I'm curious as to what's going to happen in the summer.
Yeah. Tom?
I think the ball is entirely in Steve Lansdown's court to decide how he conducts himself over the next 3 months in terms of behaviours, who he recruits, and his investments, right? And I'm intrigued to see who is named in Dave T's WhatsApp bio next after Brian Tinian.
Adam?
Intrigued short term. I'm interested to see how it's going to evolve under Roy, these 7 games. Rest assured it's going to be a totally different way of football to what we've witnessed under Struber. So I'm interested to see how that's going to look short term. But I think for me, long term, I am concerned. And I'm also, I've got my doubts about whether it will look how we all want it to look when it's all sorted out.
And Richard?
2 things. I don't care about Lansdowne. He don't care about me. And the person I blame is whoever decides to come on a podcast wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses saying the players are on the beach. That's where the rot set in, didn't it? Is that where the rot set in?
I'm sorry.
Neil?
I think we're just at a massive crossroads for the club again. I really hope it's not another Groundhog Day moment. I really hope. I just cannot see that this guy is going to change. I just can't see the lands. There's the hope, and it's the hope that kills. That there is going to be a mea culpa moment. He's going to do a mea culpa interview, and he says things have got to change, starting with me, and we're going to go for it. I just can't see it. I think we're at a Groundhog Day moment.
I think that's what I. That's what I would.
One more thing. Carthage has almost fallen, but Tinian has not fallen yet. Tinian needs to fall.
Yes. There we go. All right, everybody. Well, everybody who's tuned in while we've been doing it live, it's been a bit of a monster management job trying to keep 7 people engaged, and hopefully we've kept you all engaged if you're watching or indeed listening. We'll be covering Roy's first game in charge with a review on Saturday morning next week, because it's Good Friday. We'll also review his first home game against Sheffield United. That'll be done on Tuesday morning when most people will be back at work. That's Tuesday, whatever it is of April. And obviously, if there's any more exciting things happen during the week, any more exciting things happen, we might have another special. I hope not, but you know, you never know with Bristol City, do you? And as I say, 59 years ago today, I went to my first game, Bristol City versus Birmingham. It was the 25th of March, and we won 3-1. And you have a love affair with a football club. It never goes away, you know. And we all of us, we want the best for the football club, and we need a certain person to stand up and say things need to change. I'm going to change, or if I can't, I'm moving on. Somebody else is coming in, and they're going to do it. So everybody, thanks a lot for watching, listening, whatever.